The Middle East is once again on the edge of a major conflict, its cities and borders tense with uncertainty and fear. The world has seen this region simmer before, but today, the stakes feel higher than ever. Today, June 16, 2025, the long-standing rivalry between Israel and Iran has erupted into open military confrontation. What was once a cold war of words and covert actions has now become a hot conflict, with both nations mobilizing their forces and the world's attention fixed on their every move. For years their conflict was fought in the shadows, through proxies and covert operations, with each side testing the other's resolve without direct engagement. These shadow wars have destabilized the region, fueling unrest and uncertainty for millions. Now the world is watching as the fighting comes into the open. Newsrooms across the globe are on high alert, and ordinary people in the Middle East anxiously follow every update, wondering what tomorrow will bring. This escalation has sent shockwaves globally, forcing countries like the United Kingdom to respond. The ripple effects are being felt in capitals from Washington to London as leaders scramble to assess the risks and chart a course forward. The UK, led by Prime Minister Keir Starmer, faces a dilemma: how to support allies and protect its interests without being drawn into a wider war. The government must weigh the costs of action against the dangers of inaction, knowing that every decision carries consequences. The government has chosen a dual approach, reinforcing its military presence while calling for calm and diplomacy. This strategy aims to deter further escalation, but also leaves the door open for negotiation and peace. The decision to send more Royal Air Force jets to the region is both a show of strength and a calculated risk. The stakes are high, and every deployment is watched closely by allies and adversaries alike. A regional war could disrupt global trade, spike energy prices, and send shockwaves through financial markets. The world's economy is deeply connected to the Middle East, and any instability here is felt everywhere. And beyond the headlines, a humanitarian crisis looms. Thousands could be forced to flee their homes, overwhelming aid organizations and neighboring countries already stretched thin. The UK's actions reflect its attempt to balance support for allies like Israel and Jordan with a desire to prevent further escalation. Diplomatic channels remain open, but the pressure to act decisively grows with each passing hour. This crisis isn't just a distant problem, it affects British citizens through rising fuel prices, increased cost of living, and broader economic uncertainty. The impact is felt at the pump, in supermarkets, and across the financial sector. The choices made now will shape the UK's role on the world stage: peacekeeper, power player, or something in between. The nation's response will be remembered for years to come. By examining the UK's military moves, diplomatic efforts, and the global context, we can better understand the difficult decisions facing world leaders. Every action is weighed against the risk of a wider war. The world holds its breath, hoping that this new conflict does not spiral out of control. In these uncertain times, the hope for peace is more urgent than ever. To understand why British jets are now in the Middle East, we need to look back at a series of dramatic and escalating events that have unfolded over recent weeks. The region has been gripped by a rapid succession of attacks and counterattacks, each one raising the stakes and drawing in more international attention. The crisis began with a suspected Israeli airstrike on an Iranian consulate in Damascus, a bold move that killed several top Iranian military officials and sent shockwaves through the region. In retaliation, Iran launched an unprecedented direct attack on Israel, firing hundreds of drones and missiles in a show of force not seen before. Israel, with crucial support from allies including the UK and the US, managed to intercept the vast majority of these projectiles. Still, the psychological impact on both the Israeli public and the wider world was enormous, highlighting just how quickly the situation could spiral. Israel then retaliated with a targeted strike on an Iranian airbase, taking care to avoid civilian casualties and signaling a desire to avoid a full-scale war, even as it demonstrated its military reach. Since then, both sides have stepped back from immediate escalation, but the atmosphere remains tense, with military forces on high alert and borders heavily fortified. Meanwhile, skirmishes continue through regional proxies, especially Hezbollah in Lebanon, whose actions keep the entire region on edge and risk drawing in more actors. Against this fragile and unpredictable backdrop, the UK has increased its military presence, sending additional forces and equipment to the region as a precaution. Around the world, there is growing fear that even a small miscalculation or misunderstanding could trigger a devastating regional war. with consequences far beyond the Middle East. Every move is now watched closely by military observers and intelligence agencies, as the risk of sudden escalation remains ever-present and real. The UK's actions are part of a broader international effort to deter further violence, reassure allies, and maintain a precarious calm in a region teetering on the edge. The situation remains volatile, and any new incident, no matter how small, could quickly change the entire strategic landscape. This is the tense and uncertain backdrop for Britain's latest military deployment, as the world watches and waits to see what happens next. In response to the escalating crisis in the region, the UK has rapidly deployed additional RAF Typhoon jets to its strategically important base in Cyprus, a key location for projecting power and supporting allies in the Middle East. These advanced, multi-role jets are now tasked with two critical missions: supporting ongoing coalition operations against ISIS and, even more urgently, providing defensive air support and conducting round-the-clock surveillance to monitor potential threats. RAF pilots recently played a vital role in intercepting Iranian drones aimed at Israel, demonstrating the UK's active and immediate role in maintaining regional security and stability. The deployment also includes essential support aircraft, such as refueling tankers, which enable the jets to stay airborne longer, extend their patrol range, and respond rapidly to emerging threats. This visible show of force signals Britain's unwavering commitment to its allies, and serves as a stern warning to Iran against any further acts of aggression in the region. However, the increased presence of military assets in such a volatile area also means a greater risk of direct involvement in combat situations. The government continues to insist that the mission is strictly defensive in nature, but in a fast-moving and unpredictable conflict, the lines between defense and offense can quickly blur. A single unexpected incident or miscalculation could draw the UK much deeper into the fighting than intended. The stakes are incredibly high, and every decision made by military and political leaders carries significant, far-reaching risk. The UK's military presence acts as both a powerful deterrent and potentially a dangerous flashpoint for escalation. The world is watching closely to see whether this show of strength will help maintain peace and stability, or risk igniting a much larger and more dangerous conflict. As jets are readied, Prime Minister Keir Starmer is also leading a diplomatic push for de-escalation. The UK's message: all sides must step back from the brink. Starmer's government is working through diplomatic channels, urging restraint in public and private conversations with world leaders. British diplomats are active at the UN, supporting ceasefire resolutions and condemning violations of sovereignty. The UK's strategy is to support allies like Israel's right to self-defense, while urging them not to escalate further. This balancing act, solidarity with allies but caution against overreaction, is at the heart of the UK's approach. The government hopes that military readiness will give weight to its calls for peace. Critics warn that sending more jets could send mixed signals, potentially fueling the conflict. The UK's challenge is to be both a loyal friend and a voice of caution. In a region this tense, every word and action matters. The UK's military move is shaped by a web of alliances and interests. Its partnership with the US is central, demonstrating reliability and sharing the burden of security. The UK also reassures key regional partners like Jordan, which played a direct role in intercepting Iranian missiles. Protecting stable allies helps prevent the conflict from spreading. Economic interests are also at stake. The Middle East is vital for global trade and energy. A wider war could disrupt oil supplies, sending prices soaring and hurting the UK economy. By deploying forces, the UK aims to secure trade routes and deter threats to commerce. But every action risks escalation. British forces could become targets, and the UK could be seen as taking sides. The government hopes its defensive posture will be understood, but in war, intentions are often misread. The UK walks a fine line between deterrence and entanglement. The outcome depends on how all sides interpret these moves. The UK's actions are part of a wider international response. The US has provided strong military and diplomatic support to Israel, while urging restraint to avoid a regional war. France and Germany have joined in intercepting Iranian drones and calling for calm, creating a united European front. China and Russia, meanwhile, have criticized Western actions and called for restraint, often blaming Israel for the initial escalation. Gulf Arab states, caught between rivalry with Iran and fear of war, quietly support defensive efforts but publicly urge restraint. The diplomatic landscape is complex, with each power pursuing its own interests. The UK must navigate alliances without alienating key players. Every move is scrutinized by friends and rivals alike. In this crowded field, Britain's influence depends on careful diplomacy and clear communication. The conflict's impact is felt directly in the UK, most obviously at the petrol pump. Instability in the Middle East drives up oil prices, raising costs for British families and businesses. Higher fuel prices mean more expensive commutes, deliveries, and goods, adding to inflation and squeezing household budgets. The government is aware that a prolonged crisis could have serious economic fallout at home. Public concern is growing, with memories of past Middle East interventions fueling skepticism about deeper involvement. Many fear that sending more jets could lead to mission creep and a larger, riskier commitment. Parliament and the media are debating the wisdom of the government's strategy. The government must justify its actions to both the world and the British public. Explaining the link between regional stability and domestic security is crucial for maintaining support. The challenge? Convince citizens that these actions are necessary to prevent a worse outcome. As of June 16th, the Middle East remains dangerously unstable. The UK's deployment of jets is meant to deter aggression and support allies, while backing up diplomatic efforts for peace. Prime Minister Starmer's government is trying to balance military strength with urgent calls for restraint. This dual-track approach aims to prevent a wider war by making the cost of further aggression clear. But sending forces into a conflict zone always carries the risk of deeper involvement. The UK's actions are interpreted differently by each side. What London sees as stabilizing, Tehran may see as hostile. Success depends on perfect calibration of force and diplomacy, in a region where emotions run high. The consequences of failure are severe: a regional war, global economic disruption, and human suffering. The world's challenge is to pull all sides back from the brink and create space for dialogue. The jets in the sky are a symptom of crisis, not the solution. The Middle East crisis raises tough questions for us all. Is the UK's mix of military deployment and diplomacy the best way to prevent war, or does it risk making things worse? How should the UK balance loyalty to allies with the need to act as a mediator for peace? What price are we willing to pay at home for stability abroad? Reflecting on these questions helps us understand the difficult choices our leaders face, and the stakes for us all.